Hello again. In this third tutorial about channels and masks, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the way you would apply or use a channel once you've created one. Now, a little bit of revision just to make sure we all understand where we are so far. We talked about the way in which a channel can be generated by, for example, creating a selection with one of the selection tools, like the marquee tool here, and then choosing to save it. If I use the select menu and I go save selection, and I give this a name, just going to call it test. I press OK. That channel, or that selection, shall we say, has been stored by Photoshop as a channel, and it's given me a visual representation of that selection by turning all the selected pixels, all the things inside my selection, are pure white, and all the things that are not inside my selection are pure black. Fully selected is white, fully deselected is black. If I got a paintbrush now and I use this the way I would use any other image, and I added a little bit of color to it, let's just choose white and at 47% there, and I'm just going to draw a couple of things. I've now changed this channel, and this channel will now function in a different way. If I convert it back into a selection, and this is really the main purpose of channels, to be converted into selections by clicking down here on the load channel as selection button, or simply holding down the command and control key and clicking on the actual icon itself, you'll see one or two things. You'll see that the marching ants only appear around the pure white pixels. That's because they only recognize pixels that are at least 50% white, so they're completely ignoring my grey pixels here. However, I know that those grey pixels are a part of my selection, even though they don't appear in the document like this. And if I were to take red paint and just flood that selection, which I'm going to do now, pressing Alt-Delete, there is my half selected red tinge there. So one of the great advantages of using a channel is that you can able to make selections that are not necessarily fully selected. They can be half selected, or 10% selected, or 15% selected. Right, a final little look at this diagram here to try and make things as clear as possible. The way I've been talking and describing things is a channel is basically a stored piece of information. It's a resource. When you create a channel, whatever method you use, and you save it with a document, it has to be a Photoshop document or a TIFF document, then that becomes part of the document. And if you open it a year later, that is still there, and it's still capable of being converted back into a selection again. So it's a sort of deep frozen selection, I'll put it another way. When you unthaw it or you load it up as a selection, there are various things you can do with it. The two most common uses for it would be to select something. So for example, you could take this channel and load it as a selection. You could cut out a sort of daisy shaped image here, or part of an image as a daisy shape, and also to use it as a mask. Now a mask is slightly different. A mask is basically taking that selective property and using it in a different way. It's using it to conceal or reveal parts of an image, and the little rhyme that everyone tries to remember is white reveals, black conceals, and by inference, grey half reveals and half conceals. So we could be looking here at an image that has a mask applied to it, and the mask is hiding the background and revealing only a sort of daisy shape in the middle. So this is like a little window that we're looking through. This might become a little clearer when we actually put it to some practical use. So let's move on. Here is an image that really is crying out for the use of channels. There is no way that you could separate this image of a girl from the white background and put another background behind her without using channels. There's simply no way that you could cut her out of the picture by any other means, the lasso tool or the wand tool and all the others, because they're simply not capable of looking at these details like this fine hair here and separating it from the background. You would need a tool that created masks for you. There is one called the Color Select tool, But a much simpler way in this situation would be to create a custom channel. That's what we're going to do. Now, the ultimate aim of a custom channel is to produce, if you like, a silhouette. So if you wanted to cut this girl off the background, you would need a white silhouette on a black background. And we can create these in a number of ways. We know, for example, that we've got these 3 channels here holding visual information that can be turned into a mask. And if you look at them, you can see that the red channel, for example, has quite good contrast in it, but the skin is too light here. The green channel, a little bit better contrast. The blue channel, probably the best contrast. And we're aiming eventually to create a white silhouette on a black background, but we could begin by creating a black silhouette on a white background. While we're actually editing it, it doesn't really matter whether we work black on white or white on black, because it's a very simple matter to flip them around. I'll show you this. I'll just create a quick copy of this blue channel here. And I'll go up to the image menu here, adjustments, and I'll choose invert. The shortcut for this, Command or Control I, is well worth memorizing. And we now have, if you like, a sort of negative version. I press Control or Command I again, flip it back, flip it forth, back and forth. And some images lend themselves to black silhouettes, and some will lend themselves to white silhouettes. It doesn't matter which way around you work, as long as you remember to choose the right way around when you finally come to use the mask. Now, the job of creating a channel is basically about refining what you see in front of you into a pure white silhouette on a pure black background. And we could start with what we've got here, and we could work on it. We could eventually get there, but because this is quite a painstaking process, and to do it well is particularly painstaking, I'm going to show you a little quick shortcut. Rather than creating a copy of one of the channels, which is what we've done, I'm just going to bin that. You can begin the process by choosing the channel that you think gives you the best contrast. It's usually the blue or the green channel. And then, having sort of earmarked it, but without doing anything, go to the menu here, image menu, and look for a little command which is not used that much, called calculations. Calculations is basically a channel creation command, and I've got this sort of set up for the last time I used it. And let's imagine you sort of saw it as defaults. It would be something like this. It allows you to take one channel, blue, red, green, or whatever, and to multiply it against another channel. And if you had any alpha channels in here already, these would also show up on this menu. So to begin with, I could say I want you to take source 1 blue channel here, and I want you to multiply it with source 2 blue channel, which is itself. And our results I want you to multiply and put into a third channel down here, a new channel. So take these 2 existing channels, multiply them, and create a third channel. In other words, another way of creating a first alpha channel. Now, this would work reasonably well. It produces a quite nice dark background, but as we're aiming for white on black rather than black on white, we could invert these and have another look at it. And we can also fiddle around with these settings here. We could try out different settings and see what gives us the best results. Screen isn't bad. Lighten, not so good. Soft light, not bad either. Overlay, perhaps a bit strong. Let's choose soft light. No, actually let's choose screen this time. Quite like screen. Screen, let's look at the edges. You always look at the edges of your mask, and the thing you're really looking for is where the detail is poor. The detail is particularly poor here on the edge of her cheek. So I'll try just one more setting. It's not so good. See what gives me the best cheek edge. I don't think I'm going to be able to improve on that, so maybe I'll go back to that. Yeah, I'll go back to screen. There's no right or wrong with this. This is using your eyes and choosing what you think works best. And click OK. It's created a new channel for me. It's called Alpha 1. You notice down here. So where do I go from here? Well, you've got to remember that the center of my mask, this area here and her face and all these other bits, don't really matter because they're all going to be white eventually. The areas that I should be focusing on are the edges of the mask. And I want to create sort of fairly good definition between a white and black edge at the end here. Now there is another little shortcut or tool I can use for that, and that is the paintbrush. The paintbrush with some white pigment or paint on it, but using it in a particular way. Instead of using it as a normal paintbrush set to normal up here, I'm going to change it to overlay and put the strength back up to the stop button. Now what does this mean? Well, this basically means that when I paint with white paint, the brush will ignore the black pixels here, and it will look at anything that isn't white. So it will also ignore the white pixels. So if I paint up here, you can see it sort of, that wasn't quite white, so I need to whiten it. But it ignores white pixels, it ignores black pixels, it looks at anything that's grey, and it basically will apply the white paint to anything that's grey. So if I move my brush, you notice I'm not being careful about this at all, I'm just dragging it along the edge here. Can you see what's happening? It's basically taking my grey skin tones here, and it's whitening them. And if I come over here, just drag it along here. Now, I'm not getting such a good edge here, and you know why? It's because if I zoom in here, I can see that this black, which should be pure black, is not black. So I'm getting a little bit of an overspill there. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to switch over to black. And believe it or not, the same thing applies. So anything that's not pure black, that is grey, the black paint will affect. So I'm sort of blacking first. Black here as well. If I was being a little bit more careful with this, I might sort of use this as half strength, just drag it down to sort of, let's say 50%, but because this takes such a long time, I'm not going to be careful all the time. But anyway, this is the way you'd probably use it. Let's black that up. Then I switch back to white. A very good keyboard shortcut to remember is press the X key. X key switches the foreground and background colors, and when you're working on masks, you do this all the time. So I'm going to switch to white, and I'm going to paint the edge of her neck. Okay, and I'm going to come down here. It works less well. It's only on 54%. You put it back to 100%. It tends to work less well in dark areas, but it gets there in the end. So you can see it's not getting rid of all the jewelry here. It's leaving a little bit behind. You notice I'm not bothering about the inside of the mask. I don't need to worry about that because that's just all going to be painted white. I'm just concentrating on where I want the edge contrast. And there's again another area here which is calling for some black. So I'm switching to black, and I'm just going to black that out using overlay mode, which is blackening the pixels that are grey. Maybe use a very small brush, shrink my brush by pressing the left square bracket key. That's another little keyboard shortcut for you to remember. And then switch back to white, pressing the X key, and that's closer to the kind of edge I want. Come over here. Sort of alright, not brilliant, could do better, but not too bad. I'll just do that more. Okay, so got to that point. I could do other things here. I could, for example, flood the whole image with white using the overlay mode again. So I could go to Edit, Fill, choose the foreground color, which is my white, and set it to overlay again. That will probably be a bit strong. Soft light, probably the better one. And it's taking me a little too far, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go a lot of trial and error involved here. Simple thing to do here will be to just make my brush bigger. Take some normal white paint and white out the middle of my image. Oops, went over the edge there. Shrink it down a bit. As I said, this sort of crude bit in the middle, you don't really, if you've got the edge right, then you can just sort of paint this out any old how, it doesn't really matter. This is all going to be inside the mask. And I'll zoom up a little bit here and just white this out. Now this is where I might actually go back to overlay mode, because you can see I didn't create a good enough edge, which means I wasn't thinking ahead enough. But maybe not, maybe I can get away with it. There we go. Get rid of that bit. Alright, right. It ain't perfect, but it'll do. Again, I'm going to switch over to overlay mode here, and this is a tricky bit. I do not want to go too far over here, because I don't want to lose that fine detail. So I'm going to spread my white into the main sort of locks here, but I'm going to try and stay away from the fine flyaway hair. I want to keep that detail if I can. That'll probably be inside the mask there. In other words, retained rather than blacked out. I'll do that bit there. Now, you may not always need to do this. You might be able to get much further using other methods, like, for example, levels. Actually, what the hell? I'm just going to lower the opacity of this. I'm not going to worry too much, and I'm going to whiten out more of this, simply for the sake of time. The danger here is that I'm going to lose that fine hair detail if I'm too quick and too clumsy. One of the things is, don't take a chainsaw to a mask. You should use a scalpel rather than a chainsaw. It's another way of saying, don't try and get things done too quickly. If you're doing this, it rewards the amount of time you spend on it. Alright, I'm reasonably happy with that. It's not perfect, but it'll do. Now I need to check it. Now, a couple of very good procedures to do at this stage. You've looked at this and it seems alright to you. Flip it around. So Command I, look at it as a black and white image, and this often shows up any little holes you might have missed. You can see one over here, for example, which I'm going to use black ink. Press X key to get black up. Go back to normal and back to 100%. And also we could do a little clean out here. X key, overlay. Maybe you could whiten some of that up. This is not the only tool you can use for this purpose. You can also use the dodge tool. It works quite well. Now, just checking this again, I can see that actually some of my white here goes right into the background. Rather than waste any more time on this, I am going to use the levels command, image adjustments levels, and just move the white pointer slightly in. That will make my mask a little harsher, but it'll also whiten the background in one go. I think it's better. I'll flip it back again. The final check here, a good thing to do would be to switch back on the RGB channel and with your mask loaded, and you can then sort of see how well or how badly your mask is working. I can see, for example, it's going not that well over there, and I've also got a little area of her cheek here. I'm not going to worry too much about her hair, but I'm just going to fix this cheek here. Now to do this, I will just literally paint on the mask with the RGB visible until this little red goes away. I'm painting with white here to make this red mark go away. Red is represented by black, red equals black, and the images that aren't, a bit of the image that isn't red is obviously white. And while I'm here, I'll just clean up this part of her neck as well. Okay, let's assume that I've done a good job there, even though I haven't. How do I use this? This is the main point of this tutorial. Well, I've got my image here. Switch over to the layers. I could just load up this channel by holding on the controller command key and clicking on it here. And I could go back here and I could make a copy of this. I could copy the base image and then just paste it. And that's fine, it gets me where I want to be in one sense. I can put a background behind this now, ignore the sort of bad bits over here. But the problem is this: if I made any mistakes or I want to change this at any point, I've got no room to maneuver at all, literally, because I've cut these pixels out and put them on another layer. The only thing I can do is delete them now. That's all I can do. I could get an eraser and I could sort of start to remove the pixels manually like that. A far better approach, a far better way of using a channel, I'll just delete that, is to create a mask. And a mask basically is something that you can put on a layer in Photoshop using a channel selection to reveal or conceal parts of the image. So I can't do this to the background layer. I'm just going to make a copy of the background layer and I'm going to work on that. If I choose this copy of the background layer, I go to my channels here and I load up my alpha channel here as a selection by holding on my controller command key and clicking once, and there's a little square that appears that tells you it's going to be a selection. There it is, it's selected. And then I go back to the layer here and I add a layer mask to it. Now you add a layer mask to your layer by looking at the bottom of the layers palette where this little icon appears, this square with a circle in the middle. I click on that and you see what's happened here. I have literally a custom channel, otherwise known as a layer mask, applied just to that layer, which is basically blacking or concealing the whole background and just revealing the woman on the layer. That allows me to basically, as you've just seen, continue to edit it if I want to. I also have a lot of other options I can use here. I won't talk about those now because it will take too long, but I can continue to edit that layer mask and work on it. If I want to delete something, as before, I can go to my layer mask. I can get some black paint here. You notice I have my layer mask selected because it has a white border around it that tells me that my layer mask is selected. And if I do this, well, let me do it the other way around actually. Let me paint with black. Here we go. I need to what's happening here? I need to set this to normal, that's why it's not working. And this time it should work. There you go. You can see that I can remove it. And I do something like that. I remove something and then I just change my mind. I simply change over to white paint and I can paint it back in again. No damage done. It's not actually changing the pixels at all on the original image. It is hiding them. Okay. That is a very brief and basic introduction to the use of channels, but I hope as it made things a little bit clearer and at least allowed you to experiment yourself, which is the best way to learn things. So I will end there.